guys in the dark.
This first story is written by Horrorwood Official. The link to their channel is in the description below. Go check them out. My name is Maisie. I have worked in a liquor store that my uncle runs. I have a lot of incidents to share, but one does stand out the most. And it was a busy day. Our shop was full of people, but I could sense that someone was watching me. You know that kind of feeling that you get unconsciously, that you're just being watched. I'm talking about that exact same feeling. I slowly turned my head around to see a bald man looking at me from the corner of the shelves. For a better text, I'm a small woman, 4'5", but that guy was easily above 6 feet tall. So I acted as though I didn't even notice him. But every now and then, I would watch him from the corner of my eye. I was praying to God that this creep just leaves as soon as humanly possible. But he didn't go. He stayed there for almost 10, maybe 15 minutes without moving a single muscle, just staring directly at me. At some point in time, I thought that he was mentally unstable. So after a little while, I decided that I was going to confront him, but he was gone. In the evening, when I was ready to head home, when from the corner of my eye, I heard a vehicle starting its engine, right behind me. Now, it couldn't genuinely bother me, but today was different, as I was on edge from that encounter earlier. So as I looked towards my back, I saw a black minivan following me. After confirming my suspicions that it was really following me or not, I gave a full-on sprint towards another alleyway, but the van still kept on following me. As I didn't want to lead the person directly to my home, so I ran into yet another alley. Then I heard the van abruptly stop, and the sound of the doors opening up. I looked back to see the same creepy man from the store on the driver's seat, but with 3 more men in Joker masks this time, who looked just as creepy as him. Then one of them shouted, "Go get her!" The other 2 men were about to charge towards me, when suddenly a police siren could be heard in the distance, and to my relief, they ran back to the van, and they sped off. I never knew what their real intentions were, nor did I even want to know. But whatever they were not good at all. I'm really thankful for those policemen who were passing by that day. They unconsciously had saved me. I really don't know what they would have done if the police car hadn't passed through there, blaring its siren. So to that creep in the liquor store who wanted to kidnap me, or whatever else he wanted to do with me, let's never meet again. Back in 2007, I went on a date with a guy from Craigslist. I was 17 years old at this time. I put an ad up looking to meet someone. I don't really remember the details. A guy responded who lived really close to me, and so I emailed him back, gave him my number. He was actually one of the only ones who responded without a creepy message. He told me that his name was John, and he was 26 years old. This guy and I spoke for about 2 days before we met, and we met on a Friday night. We texted back and forth, and he asked me if I was single. I told him yes, of course. He asked what kind of food I liked to eat, because he wanted to take me to a restaurant. I asked him a few questions about himself. He told me he still lived with his mother, but had the top floor all to himself, and that he was a part-time model, and that made good money. Judging by his picture, being a model was fairly believable. So on Friday night, John comes to pick me up. He drove a silver 2-door car. I want to say that it was a Ford. He popped me a message to say that he was waiting outside for me. And after checking my hair and makeup just one last time, I said goodbye to my parents, telling them that I was heading out with friends, and then I left. I got into John's car, and the first thing I noticed was that he looked exactly like his photo. The tall, dark, and handsome type of man. He had pale skin with dark hair and dark eyes. He looked a little bit older in person, but he made up for it with a snappy fashion sense. He looked really cool and cute. He was incredibly kind, and his body language and smile totally put me at ease. Yes, it's really stupid to go on a date from Craigslist, but surprisingly, this guy was pretty normal. We chatted for a while as he started driving away from my hometown towards the highway. He wanted to drive us into the city to go to dinner, which wasn't too far away. It was around a 25-minute journey. John started to reveal more details about himself to me on this journey. He told me that he was embarrassed to tell me that he lived with his mother, and that I might think bad of him for not having his own place at his age. John got closer and closer to the highway, and I can't tell you what it was. I won't make it up because I really don't remember, but it wasn't anything remotely creepy. I just felt put off by him. You know, where you're on a date with someone and you're not sure, and then they tell you something that's your biggest turnoff. It was that kind of situation. Again, he didn't say anything too creepy, just pretty off-putting. As we're getting closer and closer to the turnoff, I tell this perfectly nice guy that I'm really sorry. I don't feel like going to dinner anymore. I'm not feeling very well. John's initial reaction was sympathy. What's wrong? Are you okay? Is it my driving? I told him I just didn't feel well. John then kept asking me, what did I say? What did I do? I told him that it's not him. It was me. I wanted to go home because I felt ill. He finally said, okay, let me drive around for a little bit before I take you back. I don't want to end the evening like this. I knew that without him driving me home, I'd have to walk over an hour, maybe more. So I told him that driving for a bit sounded like a fine idea. But instead of him turning around and going back towards mine, he veered off and started heading to the town that I knew that he lived in. I should mention that it was pitch black out, and the town where John lived was surrounded by dense woods. This isn't even worth mentioning if you take the highway and proper turnoffs to get there. But he decided that he wanted to go via the back roads because it's more scenic, despite the fact that I couldn't see a single thing. He had gone from being incredibly talkative to almost completely silent. He kept driving further into the wooded area. A few times I would ask him questions about himself to break the awkward silence. At one point, I put my hand on his knee, affectionately, trying to regain the friendly, flirty banter that we had earlier. He blanked me for the most part, occasionally answering in soft grunts or even nods. It was like he was having a tantrum. He pulled into the parking lot for the forest. It was around 9 p.m., so naturally it was really empty. He slowly kept driving, looking around for other cars. Then he parked himself upright at the end, close to the woods. There was nobody else in the parking lot, and I hadn't even seen us pass other cars to get there. For about 10 minutes, he just sat there, staring into the darkness ahead, which was pretty disturbing. I think I managed to make small talk for maybe 5 minutes with him, which is a long time when someone isn't talking back. Then I joined him in his silence. I was afraid of appearing fake. I didn't want him to think that I was scared of him. Some time of silence goes past, and John gets out of his car, closes the door, and then locks the car. I was stuck inside. His lights were on, so I could sort of see ahead. In front of the car was a field that maybe went on for about 20 feet, so really it was just a patch of grass. And then beyond that were trees and dense forest. To the left was the rest of the car park, an exit at the far end, and to the immediate right was just more forest with a small path. John disappeared into the forest ahead of us. I tried the handle on my door. It wouldn't open. I began to rationalize this. Maybe he accidentally locked the door. I was telling myself if he really wanted to do something, he'd have stayed in the car with me. With John being nowhere in sight, I decided that I needed to call somebody. I looked around for my phone, but I couldn't find it. This was old, silver, pay-as-you-go type of flip phone. I was confused that I couldn't find it because I had put it right next to me in the cup holder. After looking for it for a good few minutes, I became sure that he had taken it. Mind you, I didn't want to start rooting around his car knowing that he might be watching me. I didn't want him to catch on that I was freaking out. At that point, I started looking for my phone with only my eyes, instead of making it obvious. I was petrified this guy was watching me panic in the darkness. My eyes were darting all around the floor. There was nothing there. I looked up and squinted into the field and forest ahead of me. I saw him. He was standing about 10 feet from the car, on that small field. He was standing and smiling. It wasn't a friendly smile. He looked really freaky. This was not the same guy that I got in the car with. I looked ahead and smiled back. I was still trying to act like his behavior was normal, like nothing he was doing was scary. Still smiling, his tongue began to protrude from his mouth. He stuck it out all the way. He began wagging his tongue up and down while maintaining eye contact with me. I felt myself trembling. I was trying to compose myself. Not taking his eyes off of me, and his tongue was still out, he started unzipping his pants. He took out his dick and proceeded to urinate in front of me while staring the whole time. This is the point that I found it difficult to act like I was in on his behavior. I looked down at the floor, not wanting to watch what was right in front of me. He didn't creep or slink back to the car, but instead I hear his thundering steps and then a slam against the window. I guess at this point I was the luckiest person alive, because another car pulled into the parking lot. I don't know what this did to John, but immediately he had gotten back into the car and laughed at me. That normal laugh, and said, "So what music do you like? I'll put it on while I drive you home." He did. He drove me all the way home. When we pulled up to my house, I went for the door, but it was still locked. "I want you to promise me something." I asked him what was that. If you ever see me after this, just turn the other way. Act like you don't even know me. If you see me with my family, don't you dare say a word. I don't expect to bump into you, but just don't say anything." I agreed, and then I asked him, "Have you seen my phone?" He told me no. I guess my phone was a small sacrifice for surprisingly making it home okay. When I finally got in, I said goodnight to my parents and went upstairs to my room, turned on my computer. I wanted to gather as much information about this guy as I could. Back then I used MSN Messenger. Just like AIM, it logged in automatically whenever I started up my PC. Now before I get to the final part of this story, it's important for you to know this. One day, I had been at my friend's house. We had that kind of friendship where it was like, who could pick on the other one the most. It was all good and fun. We mostly just ripped the shit out of each other and had a good laugh. The day before, she had changed 2 contacts in my phone. An old prank. Replaced the contact Mom with a guy that I'd been sending sexual texts back and forth with. I immediately knew that she had done this, because I saw the previous messages, but I didn't change the numbers back at that time, thinking that I would just do it later. So when I logged on to my MSN, I had a ton of messages from this guy, and a few from my best friend. When John had locked me in the car, he had taken my phone and texted Mom, telling her that I'm sorry, but I decided to move out. I've met someone. Please don't look for me. I'm happy being left alone. So another thing about that message was that it was all written in text speech, and this guy knew I never texted like that. Aside from the message itself, it was just a big red flag. He had texted me back. He showed me this on camera, before texting again saying, "I don't think that this is you. I know where you went. Calling the police." This was incredibly quick thinking, as he had absolutely no idea where I was at. I really do think that that text had saved my life that night, and it explains John's sudden change of behavior. If it wasn't that random car, it definitely was the text message. Occasionally I would ask my mother if she had any real-life scary stories that she could scare me with. I thrive off of this kind of stuff. She chose not to mention this one until I was old enough to hear it. This story takes place in Canada during the late 60s, when my now deceased grandmother, who happens to be my mother's mother, was in her early 30s. She decided to drive to our town's convenience store after dark to pick up a couple of things. She had finally managed to get her 4 children to sleep, and left my grandfather to take over while she hopped in the car and made the 10-minute drive. Back then, the road from their house to the store had very few neighbors, and was mostly just woods on either side of the 2 lanes. After buying the couple of things that she needed, she left the store, jumped right back into her car, pulling out onto the road for her route home. A minute into the drive, she hears what sounds like newspaper rustling in the back of the car. Startled, she checked her rearview mirror to find out the cause of it. Instead of seeing the usual empty road or a set of headlights, reflecting back was a man's face in the back seat. Scared to death, she instantly hit the brakes, hard enough to shock this man, probably even give him whiplash, jumped out of the car, and began screaming loud enough so people near the store could hopefully hear. Having this man's plan foiled, whatever this plan entitled, he took this opportunity to escape the car and run into the woods, out of sight. After getting back to the store and calling the police, my grandmother found a cloth covered in chloroform in the back seat. Just a note, luckily a couple from a house nearby heard my grandmother's screams, helped calm her down, and took her home. My grandmother said that she was unable to speak for hours after that, only able to muster up the necessary details for the police officers, who were the ones who detected that it was chloroform on the cloth, by the way. Poor thing, she didn't drive for 6 months after this incident. The man was never caught, though. I was 5 years old when my parents decided that they would separate. I got my own room in my mother's new ground floor apartment, but I preferred to sleep with my mother when I could. It was a hot summer night. I had fallen asleep one night beside my mother, listening to the crickets outside of the window that was open behind the headboard. Hours later, I ended up waking up. The door to my bedroom was directly across from my mother's, and I noticed that my cat was sitting in the doorway. I found this pretty odd, seeing as how the cat never sat in front of any doorway, and my cat usually would sleep with us at night. As I watched, the cat had turned into my bedroom and meowed. I felt odd. I turned and woke my mother up, who had promptly asked what was wrong. We both had turned to look at the bedroom, and we saw the silhouette of a man standing there. I vividly remember my mother quickly picking me up and tossed me out of the open window, where I had landed safely on the ground. Seconds later, my mother had crawled out of the window and began to scream for help, insisting that someone should call 911. When the police finally arrived, they couldn't find any signs of forced entry. All they saw was that the front door had been unlocked, which my mother had insisted that she had chained up before we had gone to sleep. A few weeks later, my mother was cleaning the house when suddenly she entered the small closet where the water heater was. In that closet, we found a pair of gloves, a gum wrapper, and a note full of names and pictures. I do believe that the man had been in the apartment for a while and had waited in the closet until we had all fallen asleep. I really don't know what his intentions were, and I'm really not sure if they ever caught the guy.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.